Okay guys, let's go. Enough with the interruptions. Just come on out so we can get part 3 done without you disrupting it.
Ugh, it's not even noon yet. Ugh.
So, geez, time to make that dough. Time to make that dough. We're not baking anything. It's time for the PlayStation Vita hardware retrospective. Look, I know you both have your opinions on the Vita, so why waste any time? I'll be ranking all the models, and I don't want to get blindsided by either one of you.
I mean, I don't got no dog in this fight, dog. I ain't got no favorites.
Well, what about you, E.G.? You've never shied away from sharing your thoughts.
True. And even though I probably care more about the Vita than Sony ever did, I don't care about the Vita hardly at all. I already wrote a script for all of us. It's settled. You're going to be helping with this video whether you like it or not.
Whoa. What's going on, dude? And with all that nonsense out of the way, while I was off enjoying the very successful 3DS, the PlayStation Vita was floundering and failing to find any kind of substantial audience. The expensive memory cards and lack of any really interesting games, at least for me, kept me away from the system for a long time, but I eventually got started when I picked up a used Slim model that came with a case and a 16GB memory card. A few years later, when I got bit by the collecting bug, I decided to order a PlayStation TV off eBay before they got way too expensive for me, and I also found an OLED model at a local used game store. Truthfully, even though there are hardly any more games coming out for the Vita, thus making the library complete with about 1,000 or so games at this time, there are still very few titles which actually interest me. I only have 6 total physical games, and really only one that's an actual system exclusive, so I was really stretching just to find even half a dozen games that I will eventually get to playing on this system. Despite all that, I really do like the Vita and think the hardware is particularly a strong showing from Sony, especially when you compare it to any of the PSP models. Which one is best? Which one is worst? Strap yourself in because of all the ranking videos I've done thus far, this one was the most surprising at just how close the competition got for that coveted #1 spot. Alright, so let's get the easy one out of the way. The PlayStation TV. While it certainly has its uses, the PS TV is really something that I could only recommend picking up once you own one of the handheld models. Let's get into why. Starting with the obvious, the PlayStation TV is the only Vita that plays Vita games on a TV. This also applies to any other content the Vita can play, including PS1 and PSP games. The mini console outputs video via HDMI and can display out to 720p or even 1080i if you can stomach interlaced video, meaning the video output beats either of the 2 handheld models which only display at 540p. You can also use an Ethernet cable for internet connectivity instead of Wi-Fi if you prefer. For control input, you can pair either DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 controllers, which are arguably more comfortable than either handheld Vitas. I already mentioned the ability to play PSP games on your TV, and it is undoubtedly the best way to play PSP games on a TV due to those games actually playing at full screen instead of being letterboxed like an actual PSP plays the game. What's bad about the PlayStation TV? For one, nearly 30% of all Vita games simply do not work on it. Estimates place the Vita's library at over 1,400 titles across all regions, and there are about 400 which do not work. While it makes sense that the Vita handhelds have hardware features such as the touchscreen and rear touchpad that stand as barriers to some games not able to work very well on the PS TV, there's another, more sinister reason why many games don't work. The publisher wants you to buy a separate version of the game that exists on a proper home console instead of buying just the Vita version and playing between both your handheld and TV model. They'd rather have you double dip and own two separate versions of the same game for handheld and TV play. In fact, of my 6 Vita games, only 2 work on the TV. The 4 of which don't work, 2 I can see having hardware compatibility issues. But the other 2 don't use touch controls, so publishers can be pretty scuzzy sometimes. You also have to use the PlayStation TV on the TV, and the platform is first and foremost handheld centric. So it's easily the least versatile version of the Vita. How's that for alliteration, PG?
I would normally, at this point in the video, tell you what the second best model is, but I'm going to do things a bit differently. We're going to slug it out between the OLED and the Slim, one aspect at a time. The reason being is, the OLED and the Slim have been the closest comparison I've done in any ranking video. Before the other guys weigh in, I'm going to start this section off by talking about the looks.
When it comes to handhelds, Sony is the absolute king of aesthetics. These are some of the best looking pieces of tech that I own. They have enormous screens, the OLED model makes great use of silver and black that harkens back to the PSP, and the Slim is super sleek in all black. The Slim's presentation is slightly marred due to the screen existing in this separate bezel segment. And while it's not too bad in this all-black version, it really stands out in the colored versions and also when you're directly comparing it to the OLED. But while the OLED has a larger build that grants it some heftiness and durability, it doesn't do much for it in the looks department. Gotta say, I don't prefer either one.
We gotta talk about that OLED screen, yo. This model of the Vita is known for its gorgeous display, and those darker blacks and vivid colors alongside better viewing angles make this the better looking screen. Not so fast, PG. This screen is not without negatives. When you're playing a game outside in the sun, the OLED can't keep up the brightness. Not to mention, OLED screens, they're susceptible to pixel burn-in, particularly when you play video games on them. I guess that makes you a fan of the Slim Vita. It uses an LCD screen, which can get bright enough to play in sunlight, and you also don't need to be worrying about no burning, my man. Hardly. The LCD panel doesn't look nearly as good with its comparatively washed out colors and lacking black levels, and worse viewing angles, I might add.
You both bring up great points about the screens. OLED really is magnificent to behold, but if you do get burn-in on your screen, it's likely you'll be stuck with it. I'm going to have to declare this a tie when it comes to the screens.
IG. The front camera acts the same on both the OLED and Slim, but the OLED keeps it better hidden than the Slim does. No argument here. This thing is accentuated for some bizarre reason. It's distracting. The look of it is way better on the OLED.
Point goes to the OLED then.
Next up is the controls. The OLED has the better shoulder buttons. Know how I know? They're bigger and have more of a spring to them. That's why. The sticks and motion controls are the same here as they are on the Slim, but I do like how that PlayStation button lights up like that. Ugh, you actually like that obnoxious blue light constantly shining in your face? Trust me, I know obnoxious, and that's obnoxious. True that, dog. One thing I often sometimes notice is when playing the OLED, the directional buttons and symbol buttons feel pretty sharp and don't press down near enough. The weird thing about the PlayStation button and the start and select buttons is that they are flush with the casing. They are much more comfy on the Slim.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you guys. The controls feel and work better overall on the Slim, so it gets the point.
Hey yo, you know I got to crank up that sound when I'm playing on Vita, and you know what? The Slim speakers are a whole lot louder than the OLED speakers.
No rebuttal, e.g.? Okay, another point to the Slim.
You know the useless camera on the back? Well, it's even worse on the OLED.
Yeah, the rear camera stays out of the way better on the Slim. Another point.
The touchpad is a lot smaller on the Slim. I guess they thought it wasn't all that important.
It was shrunk due to fan feedback, but it is still harder to use as a result. Point to the OLED.
But that means the grips are smaller on the OLED.
True, the Slim got larger grips as part of the trade-off. Point goes to the Slim.
Those power and volume buttons are metallic on the OLED and plastic on the Slim.
True. Point to the OLED.
The Slim has these boring LEDs to let you know when it's on or charging. At least they don't shine in your face none.
Equally good points. This one is a tie.
The Vita game card slot is a lot bigger on the Slim and easier to open.
That's a nice advantage. Point to the Slim.
The accessory port is unnecessary and unwanted.
Right, it's missing from the Slim and unused on the OLED. Neither one gets a point.
The end is close. I can smell it. The Slim is charged via a micro USB port. Sure, that means that you can charge it with just about any old micro USB cable, but it also means that it disconnects easily, and later on in life it might not secure itself enough to even charge the Vita at all. Right on, e.g. On the OLED, there is a proprietary power port. And yeah, that means you can only charge the Vita with that one cable, but it's a really secure connection that will last a real long time.
Sound settled then. Point goes to the OLED.
The Slim has yet another problem. The headphone jack's barrel port sticks out for some reason. You won't be seeing that flaw on a new 3DS.
Fair enough. Point to the OLED.
I tested the microphones on both systems, and even after listening to recorded audio with headphones, I couldn't hear any difference. I'm so mad that I have nothing to complain about!
Okay. A tie then?
Same goes for the memory card slots. No difference! How am I supposed to get mad if there's nothing to make me mad?
Sounds like you're finding a way. This one is another tie.
Are we done yet? Alright, dog. I'm about done here.
One last thing, the form factors. The OLED is heavier but feels like it can take more abuse, while the Slim is lighter but not as sturdy. This is, again, another one of the categories that is a wash between the two models, since you are gaining a positive and a negative no matter which one you go with. A lot of these categories come down to preference, and I personally can't decide which one I like better in this category. Before we announce the winner, let's quickly review. We have ties in the following categories: looks, screen, power and charging lights, accessory port, microphone, memory card slot, and form factor. The OLED wins in the following: front camera, touchpad, power and volume buttons, charge port, and headphone jack. The Slim wins in these areas: controls, speakers, rear camera, grips, and Vita card slot. Looks like we have a draw. Or we would have if I hadn't remembered two very important factors. The Vita Slim has an internal storage space of 1 gigabyte in case you don't have a memory card, and also an extra hour of battery life. You may not think the extra gig of internal space is worth all that much, but consider that these days if you go out to buy a Vita and accessories, you're going to be buying them used. And on the secondhand market, the price of those memory cards are getting fairly high. If you just want to try the system without shelling out for a memory card, you can pick up some physical games and you'll be all set with a Slim model and no memory card. Now that 1 gigabyte of space does become unusable once you do insert a memory card into the system, so you could argue that there is a very small use case for it. But I would still say it's a really important feature to consider, especially when you compare it against the OLED that has no internal space and has to use a memory card if you want to save your game progress. With that being said, I declare the Vita OLED to take second place, with the Vita Slim taking the number 1 spot. Well, that was close. I honestly thought we were going to have a tie. But I guess that just means that Sony made a couple of fantastic handhelds that stack up well, even against each other. Thanks for watching. This is Steven with Level 1 Sword, reminding you to stay sharp out there.
Hello? Steven? Where'd you go? We're stuck in here. This ain't funny no more. I'm claustrophobic, man.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to keep on top of the videos, definitely take a sec to subscribe. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to follow me across the internet. Level 1 Sword also has a bi-weekly podcast, so give it a listen.